Hi everyone, it's Natalie and welcome back to my channel. Today is finally the day I get to talk about the worst books and most disappointing books that I read in 2021. There were surprisingly quite a few of them. Now, as for the disappointing ones, they were not all ones that I had high expectations of, but they just did not deliver what I thought they were going to deliver. They didn't do it. They didn't do it. And that's sad because I wanted them to do it. And then the worst books were just ones that did not work for me. They were not for me and they did not work for me. So let's start with the most disappointing ones. So first we have the Ex Hex. This was good. Like, don't get me wrong. This was actually an enjoyable reading experience. I had no problems while I was reading this book. Totally, absolutely fine. But the problem lies in the fact that I don't remember anything about this book except witches. Literally, the book just did not do anything that was truly memorable. In the moment, it was enjoyable. Again, it was completely enjoyable. While I was reading it, I found it easy to pick up and easy to breeze through, actually. But I knew even as I was reading it that I was not going to remember anything that happened by the end of it. And lo and behold, it is only 2 months later, and most of what I remember is because I have already filmed a recent reads where I talk about it and I read the summary of it, so that tells you something. The next book is A Nun for the Viking Warrior. Now this one I read for my unhinged vlog where I read books that are romances with nuns and or priests. And this one, spoiler alert, was a disappointment. Was it overall a bad book? No, I can definitely see why some people might enjoy it. I did derive some enjoyment from it, but as a whole, as a reading experience, I just wanted it to do more. I did not find it a satisfying reading experience. And considering the cover, which actually now I just remember that I could hold up the book, but I'm not going to because I don't want to look for it. Anyway, the cover was telling me something. The cover and the title were saying something. And it just turned out to be a very traditional romance. And there's nothing wrong with a traditional romance, but it just was not doing what I was thinking it was going to do. So, disappointment. The next one is Hot Rabbi. This is another one that, based on the title, I thought it was going to do something, but it was something completely different. And so I was just kind of disappointed because the book did not deliver what I thought it was going to deliver. Again, not a terrible story. It did have interesting character dynamics between the two protagonists, and I did think they had some interesting and quite philosophical, I guess, conversations, but it was just not what I was expecting from a book called Hot Rabbi, so there was just a disconnect. That's all I'm saying. And then we have one that, wow, can't believe I'm going to mention this here, but Guarding Temptation by Talia Hibbert. It is notable that a Talia Hibbert book is here because Talia Hibbert is my everything. I love their romance books. Their romance books, 98% of the time, do it for me. The formula they have just works for me. I like the romances they tell. I like the character dynamics they write. But Guarding Temptation just did not serve. The smut was, as always, solid, delectable, a good time, because Talia Hibbert doesn't know how to write a bad smut scene. But the actual romance, the actual story was just unsatisfying. It was just unsatisfying. I wanted more and it was not more. And that is sad because I know that they can do it. I know they can write romances that work perfectly for me, but this was just not it, and that is sad because Talia Hibbert should never belong in a disappointing list. Never, ever, ever. I hope it never ever happens again. The next one is The Disenchantments. as I've said a million times, this was not a terrible book, but it was just meh. It just was. It existed. It was something I read, and I will probably forget it the more time passes. This was just, it had believable teenage protagonists, but it was just not for me. It was not what I was thinking was going to be. And overall, the things I liked about it that I wanted more of, I understand why there wasn't more, but it still made the story more lackluster for me. It's just sad. It's just sad because I really like some of the works of this author, so I wanted to love all of it, but this was just an okay read. The next one is a Punderworld. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling. At this point, the only Hades and Persephone retelling I want in my life is the one by Madeline Miller, but we're gonna have to wait for that. Anyway, this is not about Madeline Miller. This is about Punderworld. This was okay. I can definitely see why some people would enjoy it. It was a pleasant reading experience. There was nothing inherently terrible about it. I just thought there could have been more of a mix-up, more of a real reimagining of this myth, and I didn't feel like that happened. And it's sad because I do like the artwork, and in general, I like bits and pieces of what was done to change things up in this retelling, but ultimately it just didn't do enough for me. The next one is Drag Me Up. Is this another Hades and Persephone retelling? And I think so far I've only mentioned romances. Oh, the Disenchantments is not technically a romance. Now listen, the only reason there's so many romances in here is because I'm a romance reader and I love romance, okay? So don't get it twisted. I love romances. The truth is, you gotta dig to find gold, and sometimes you're just not going to find it, okay? That's just life. Now, what book was I talking about? Drag Me Up. So this was one that I really thought I was going to love. I really wanted to love, but it just was a disappointment, mostly because there was so much world building, but it was convoluted and confusing, and I just feel like I'm like, either commit to the world building and making it clear, or commit to the romance and make the world building secondary and the references to other Greek gods secondary. And I don't feel like that happened, and so this was just, it could have been so much more. The point is, it could have been so much more. The next book is Lament. Currently, we are in our Maggie Stiefvater is losing her charm era for me. I still love her books. I still love the Raven Boys. I've really been enjoying the Dreamers trilogy, but overall, her other stories outside of those characters that are beloved to me are just not quite the same. They're not quite the same. They're not quite the same vibe, and they just don't do it for me. And this one, I can't fault it too much because I think it was her debut novel, and I can see the sprinklings of what I love of Maggie Stiefvater's books in this one. But ultimately, no, it was disappointing. It could have done so much more. It had an insta-love romance that was just boring, not interesting. I can get behind insta-love, but in this situation, it just did not work for me. And this is one of her books that is narrated in first person, and I simply do not like Maggie Stiefvater's first person narration. I don't think it quite delivers the magical vibes that her third person narration delivers. So that's just reality for me. The next one is a manga, and it is Say I Love You. I don't have anything to say about this because I literally don't remember anything about it. It was not memorable, period. And The art style is a more of an older art style, which I'm not into, so I also didn't enjoy that. But in general, I really wanted to get into this manga series. I wanted to find it cute and fun and everything, but I just could not. And it is so sad because it was recommended by a friend and I wanted to love it, but it just didn't happen. And the last book on my most disappointing list is Of Fire and Stars. This one was another meh experience. It was another moment of like, this could have done so much more. This was just something I read. Barely remember any of it because I just thought it was a basic, generic YA fantasy. I enjoyed the romance. I did enjoy the romance. But overall, I didn't feel like it was enough to make me fall in love with this story, feel committed to the story, and want to continue the series. Y'all, I really wanted to love it. I really did, but it just... what a disappointment. Now let's talk about the 4 worst books I read in 2021. Now usually I do not make a list of worst books. Mostly because most of the time I only ever read like one book a year that I really am like, this did not work for me one bit. But this year I had 4. So I had to talk about them. I had to mention them. I had to share my troubles with y'all. Anyway, the first one is the one that is most strongly just not for me. It was just not for me, and so I did not love it. And that is Plum's Priest Daddy. So yes, we have 2 books from my Priest and Nun vlog, chaos vlog, in this video. What a time. So this one is a case of it's not you, it's me. Let's just summarize it as this has littles and middles age play, and that is not my kink. It is not for me. It is not enjoyable for me to read. And so overall, that kink and other kinks in the book either made me uncomfortable or were not for me to the point where I was just bored reading the book. So yeah, this... I wish I had not read this. I wish I had not read this because in some ways, small parts of it live rent-free in my mind, but like in a bad way, in a haunting me way. So this book is definitely for someone, for someone's, but I am not that someone. No. The next one is Nothing But Blackened Teeth. I had such high hopes for this horror. I really thought this horror book was going to do it for me. I was like, we have a haunted house. We have a wedding at a haunted house. I was like, we have a group of friends. I was so ready to love this. But then I read it and it just did nothing. It did nothing for me. Like, I just wanted more descriptions in it. I wanted to feel more invested in the characters. I wanted for it to be that if the characters are self-aware of horror tropes, that in some way those are being twisted, changed up, criticized, whatever you want to call it. But I wanted this to add a little bit of spice, add a little bit of interest, add a little bit of something new. And it did not. In general, the writing sometimes had really, really beautiful lines, but most of the time I felt like I couldn't really picture what was going on. I wasn't fully invested in the characters, and so ultimately I felt like the story did not do what it set out to do or what it could have done. The next book is Real Men Knit. Now listen, I read this at the beginning of 2021. I don't have really good memories of it, but I know I did not like it. I know I did not enjoy it. I know that I was not a fan of the relationship of the characters. Once they started getting closer and closer, I thought, okay, maybe I can enjoy the smut, but the smut, I can't remember if it was fade to black or just super, super, super mega vanilla boring. Can't remember which of those two options it is, but I know that whichever one it was frustrating. So the only reason I finished this book is because a friend of mine gifted it to me. So I was like, I'm a completionist, let's do it, let's finish it. And honestly, I should not have, because I did not enjoy this. I did not find the relationship between the characters enjoyable. I'm pretty confident I found the guy especially irritating. So in general, this was just not a good time for me. It was not a good time for me, and I wish I had not read it. And the last book I'm going to be talking about is I'll Be the One. Now, this one's just sad. This one is just sad because I love YA. I love me some YA. I'm preparing to be an English teacher. I'm going to be doing student teaching this year. I love reading YA and finding books that I'm going to have in my classroom library. But I'll Be the One was just confusing. It was confusing. It didn't have structural narrative integrity. And that was confusing because it's a YA contemporary. If this had been a YA fantasy or a YA sci-fi, I could have been like, okay, some things don't quite click. They don't quite add up, but that's okay. It's a fantasy. It's a sci-fi. We forgive it. But I'm like, this is a contemporary novel. Why am I confused? Why are things not making sense? Why are plot points contradicting each other? Just why? Why is this happening? It was just dumbfounding. I'm literally still disturbed, mostly because I don't understand where it went wrong, why certain decisions were made, why the editor didn't catch certain things. I was just like, what? And then it's the kind of story that you know what's going to happen in the end. And the fact that that one bit that we're all looking for, we're all anticipating, is summarized in one paragraph gives me war flashbacks to reading Jane Austen and being frustrated that the moment I feel like we're building towards is then summarized in a paragraph and I don't even get to live the moment beat by beat. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't live my life this way. And I'm just upset all around because I wanted to love this because I'm like, we have an Asian main character. I think she's Korean American. She's fat, she's queer, and then this just was no. It was no. And I'm sad that it was no. I wanted it to be yes, and life is unfair like that sometimes. Anyway, that's it for this list of most disappointing and worst books I read in 2021. Hopefully 2022 brings better things. Hopefully the fact that I'm probably only going to have one brain cell left means that I will be very, very selective about what I read in 2022, and therefore it is better selections than 2021 brought me. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you would like to follow me on any of my social media, I will have the links to that down below in the description. But for now, see you next time.